Okay, thanks everybody for coming today and listening to our vendor session talking about streamlining software management with Chocolatey. There's the man responsible for the dark screen. There. So just a quick introduction on who we are. First of all, my name is Paul Broadwith. I'm from Glasgow up in Scotland. I've got 30 years in IT covering development and operations, but I'm the technical engineer manager at Chocolatey Software. So there's products we're going to be talking about today. I'm responsible for it and my team is responsible for it as well. So we develop and produce all the products that we're going to talk about today. James.
I'm James Ruskin. I'm just up the road from Cambridge, and I'm a DevOps engineer at Chocolatey Software, working in Paul's team.
So questions and answers for today. If we can hold those questions to the end, we've got quite a lot to get through. We've got some slides, we've got a demo. If we don't get to questions, we're on the booth, so you can come and see us, ask us anything about what we're presenting today, or speak to us about Chocolatey in general. If we do have some time for questions, awesome. But just in case, let's hold them to the end. So we're going to look at the software management challenges, and it really comes down to three things. Hopefully you can see that on the screen there, but it comes down to tech, people, and platform. And the tech challenges that we're really looking at in our modern enterprise environments. We're looking at more applications and more versions. We're always looking to do more with less. There's less people, there's less time, but there's more things to do. And in this case, we're looking at more applications and more versions, and that also gives us a bigger attack surface. We've got more applications, more versions, more updates, more of everything. There's more to attack. And that ends up with more security vulnerabilities for all of that software. And trying to manage that Windows environment using legacy tools, as we still do. As I said, I'm from an operations background, so this is what my bread and butter. It's time consuming, error prone, and we've got on there as well. It's not scalable. It just really doesn't work. Older legacy tools in a modern environment just really doesn't work these days. So we're also looking at the people challenge. So it's not just the tech that's an issue, that legacy software, those more versions of everything. Packaging and patching Windows is painful. We've got Windows Update. You know, if you're using something like WSUS as well, this is painful to do. This is patching just your Windows software, just patching your Windows operating systems. What about all of your other software? Your line of business applications, your browsers, your Java versions, the 400,000 of those that there are, the various flavors of those as well. How are you patching all of that? You're really looking at tools to be able to handle that rather than having lots and lots of tools to be able to do it. And engineers are getting frustrated doing these repetitive tasks. I remember before I started at Chocolatey, I was a contractor for a very long time, and I worked for quite a large enterprise organisation that had a team of people sitting in 2 rows of desks, and all they did all day was create packages for software. Not Chocolatey packages, but packages that would update the software, whether it was new software, whether it was versions of those software. And that's just all they did all day. So this is a really repetitive and quite a boring task to be done over and over and over again. And people are spending hours and hours configuring and deploying this software manually. And then we've got the platform challenge as well. So I had a conversation on GitHub with somebody actually at the weekend, and they were talking about the Linux environment, which they had come from, and they were talking about the Windows environment and couldn't really understand how it doesn't really match what went on in Linux. So Linux, when you're installing it, you really need a package manager to do everything. So that's where you live. All your software lives in that. Windows is not the same. Windows, we've got many, many different ways you can install software. There's many different installer formats. We're talking about here, you've got zips, you've got archive formats, you've got exes, you've got internal software, you've got MSIs, you've got Apex, you've got everything there, and you can install them from a number of different places. You've got Windows Store, you've got downloading the software manually. How are you supposed to manage all of that? Where do you find the software? So if you allow your users to go and download software onto their machines, where do they find it? They're going to download Firefox. They're not always going to go to Mozilla. They're going to find it on FileHippo or some other random site, and you don't know where that's come from, what it's got inside of it. And then as well, when you're deploying to 100,000, 10,000 nodes, can you repeatedly install that software? Can that software have a known execution format? Is it going to do the same thing over and over every single time? You're going to get those same results. Is it scriptable? Is it silent? Is it going to bother the user? They're going to have to click things. So there's all of that to take into account as well. So this is where Chocolatey comes in. Chocolatey is a universal packaging format, which I hope you can see there. We're having problems with dark backgrounds, but that's white text, so let's see. So it's universal packaging format. Chocolatey didn't reinvent the wheel when it came up with the universal packaging format. It used a packaging format called NuGet, which if anybody's familiar with developers or is a developer will know that you use that to install libraries and development type tools. Chocolatey took that well-known packaging format and built on top of that. So we didn't reinvent the wheel. We used something that was tried and true and tested. And we added on to that to allow it to be able to manage and deploy software using the installers, the zips, the scripts, the binaries, be able to do all of that and have one universal packaging format. So with Chocolatey, you write the package once, you deploy it anywhere you've got Windows with anything, and then simply track it and manage it. So this is a kind of breaking how Chocolatey works down into 4 steps. You create the package. You can either do that with a GUI or you can use PowerShell, do it manually. We'll talk about the GUI later on. You deploy it anywhere you have Windows. We've got desktop servers, really important, that you can deploy Chocolatey onto servers, cloud, on-prem, containers, whatever Windows is, you can deploy Chocolatey packages onto there. And you deploy it with everything. Chocolatey integrates with many, many, many tools. We've got Chocolatey Central Management, which is what we provide. And it has deployments as well, where you can deploy and manage that software. You've got Puppet, Ansible, SCCM, Intune, we're talking about there. You've got DSC, you've got Chef, you've got anything that can run a command line tool, any of your endpoint management software that can run a command line tool. And we've also got Intune as well. You can use Chocolatey packages in Intune. So you don't have to have Intune packages and Chocolatey packages. You can use your Chocolatey packages in Intune as well. And then once that's deployed, you track and manage it. You manage that software. So the Chocolatey product suite, it really comes down to 6 products. We've got Chocolatey CLI, which is most people's introduction into Chocolatey. That's a command line tool. It allows you to manage things from the command line, manage those packages, manage that software. You've got Chocolatey GUI as well, which I like to talk about as big clickable buttons, or it allows people that are not technical to be able to manage Chocolatey packages, if that's what you want in your organization. Then we move on to the kind of extensions for that. We've got Chocolatey licensed extension, which is the advanced functionality for Chocolatey CLI that allows you to be able to have advanced functionality beyond what the open source version would give you. We've got the Chocolatey GUI license extension, very much the same for Chocolatey GUI, extends the Chocolatey GUI functionality for your organization. Chocolatey Agent is really the glue that holds some of the solutions together for Chocolatey. So if you're using Chocolatey Central Management, which is the other one there, you'll need Chocolatey Agent for that communication. Agent on the machine allows you to manage and track that software. And it also allows you to do what we call self-service management, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But that's effectively having non-admin users be able to manage their computer without you having to manage it for them. Free up time of your sysadmin to let them do what they want to do, which is get on with managing your systems. A lot of people don't know that Chocolatey actually has a commercial version. They think it's an open source free tool, and it is. Chocolatey CLI and Chocolatey GUI are that, and we'll talk about the license for that a little bit later on. But the commercial side of Chocolatey is Chocolatey for Business. That's what we call it, and it encompasses those 4 products that we talked about there. So just a quick introduction to those 6 products for people who are not aware. If we're going to talk about Chocolatey CLI first, because that's really the heart of the Chocolatey product suite. That's what everything else kind of builds on top of. But Chocolatey CLI was created by Rob Reynolds. A lot of you are familiar with Chocolatey. You might know about Fervent Coder. That's his name in lots of social media places. He created that product in 2011, or released the first version in 2011, the 23rd of March. Another fun fact that many people don't know, Chocolatey is almost 12 years old. This isn't a flash in the pan. This isn't something that was built last week. We've been around. Sorry?
But it's only on version 1.
It is only on version 1. We released that last year. But we are where we are. And we're looking at releasing version 2 very, very soon as well. So we've gone from version 1 in at 10 years, 11 years, and we're now looking at version 2 in another year. We've currently got that in alpha, and a beta will be coming out shortly, and then we'll be releasing the full version of that. So I've kind of mentioned a little bit back about the open source license there. It's free and open source under Apache 2, which is important for organizations to use that particular license. Some organizations need particular licenses in order to use open source tools. So Chocolatey is available under the Apache 2 license. And it is the package manager for Windows. We've been about for almost 12 years now. I think we can lay claim to that, over other package managers, shall we say. Chocolatey GUI, As I said, big clickable buttons, or big clickable icons that we've got there, allows you to manage the software installations with some of the functionality that Chocolatey CLI has. So it's not got all that advanced functionality because you don't need it. If you're going to be using the GUI version, you tend not to be needing all the advanced functionality, but it allows you to do pretty much what most people want, which is install, upgrade, uninstall, and pin software. It also allows you to configure Chocolatey CLI. So there's a lot of options in Chocolatey CLI. It's a very, very powerful tool. There's a lot of options. It has a lot of features. There's a lot of configuration. You can do that from Chocolatey GUI as well. You can do it in the traditional Windows GUI format. It's great for desktop and non-technical users because it has those big clickable buttons. It doesn't have all the advanced functionality because it's not needed. And it's what we use for self-service management, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Chocolatey licensed extension. As I mentioned earlier on, that extends Chocolatey CLI, and this is what's moving into now the commercial version of Chocolatey, what people pay for. And it extends Chocolatey CLI for, and adds on those bits that you would need for the enterprise, for your organization. It matches those organizational use cases. Allows you to create packages instantly with Package Builder. So if you've created Chocolatey packages, you may have done it all manually. You may have went in and created the new spec file, which is the metadata for a Chocolatey package, written those PowerShell scripts. You may have done all of that manually. With Package Builder, you can actually right-click on an executable file, and it will create that package for you. Then you can go in and tweak it if you need to, but it will give you the defaults for all of that. You can improve the security and control as well within your organization with Package Audit and Package Internalizer. Package Audit will let you know who's installed what and when, so you can keep track of all of that. And Package Internalizer will allow you to take packages from Chocolatey Community Repository, which is, if you've used Chocolatey, you're probably really familiar with, and bring that down into your organization, internalize all those resources, and allow you to take that package, which will now be a portable package because everything's inside it, and put it into an internal repository and use that from there. Saves you reinventing that wheel, because that package may have already been written by a known good maintainer. Why would you reinvent the wheel there? Obviously check that package to make sure it meets your organizational standards, but it does a lot of that work for you once you're convinced that that's what you want to use. Package throttle is something we don't talk about a lot, but there's a lot of customers using it because, for example, if you've got a satellite site, maybe limited bandwidth, you don't want all of a sudden all the nodes there downloading and updating those packages at the one time, so you can throttle that bandwidth of those packages being updated and optimize that. And finally, as I mentioned earlier on, you can leverage, I should really take that out of the slides, that word, leverage Chocolatey packages in Intune. A bit like the way I look at it is, we all had VHS, we all had the movies on VHS, then we all moved to DVD, we could buy our movie collection again. You don't have to do that when you move to Intune. You can take your Chocolatey packages that you're deploying in your environment. Now you want to use Intune to manage those endpoints, you can use your Chocolatey packages in there as well, saving your admins time from restarting from scratch. Chocolatey GUI license extension, I'm just going to touch on that a little bit because it's one of our newest products. That's a 1.01 release just now. We've only had a few releases of that, but it effectively allows you to organizationally brand Chocolatey GUI. So whatever the logo for the company you've got, that will appear in Chocolatey GUI, and it'll also appear when you start it up as well. And it allows you to configure Chocolatey GUI as well. If you've ever used it, it allows you access to, Chocolatey GUI will allow you access to settings and various different options that you can configure the GUI version. With the automated configuration, as an admin, you can turn that off. Maybe you don't want users playing with those settings, so you can turn that screen off and they've not got access to it. Chocolatey Agent, I talked about, was kind of the glue that holds a lot of the licensed products together for the self-service management and also Chocolatey Central Management as well. So it allows that Chocolatey Central Management communication, as you'd imagine from the name Agent. It sits on the client device, whether that's a Windows desktop or a Windows server, and it'll allow communication with Chocolatey Central Management, allowing you to manage that endpoint. But it'll also allow you to allow non-admin users to have admin rights on that box to install software. So Windows requires admin rights to install most software, but how does users who don't have admin rights install software for themselves? Potentially, if you're an organization and you say, you know, we're going to let our users install whatever browser they want or whatever flavor of another app. Okay, that still requires admin rights, but using Chocolatey Agent and using something we call self-service management, you can allow those users to pick what they want to install in that box, install it, but without giving them admin rights. And you can also tweak that a little bit. So for example, if you have a golden image you deploy to all your machines, and let's say you mandate Chrome has to be on there. Your line of business application requires Chrome. But you know what? We want to let Bob in accounting or Fiona in finance install Firefox if they want to. What you can do is you can say you can't manage Chrome. You can upgrade it if you want, but you can't uninstall it. But if you want to install Firefox, you can do. You can upgrade Firefox, you can do that. You can uninstall it as well, but you can't uninstall apps you haven't installed yourself. So as an IT team, you mandate the apps, and then they can install the apps and manage the software that they want to install as well. And that can be tweaked. You can allow them to uninstall it if you want. Don't, it's very, very flexible. And Chocolatey Central Management, one of our big products, one of the things that we ask a lot of organizations to try out to see if it meets their needs. And that allows you to have real-time insights into the software that's running on those endpoints, whether that's for licensing purposes. Let's say you pull out a report and you've got 100 versions of Adobe Acrobat installed, but you've only got licenses for 50. Then you know you're not licensed there for those additional products. So it'll tell you the software that's on there. It'll give you reporting on your endpoints, tells you what's outdated, what's not outdated. If you've got a CVE for 7-zip, for example, what ones are actually vulnerable, get that patched really quickly. And you can do that with Chocolatey Central Management deployments. So as I mentioned, 7-zip's got a CVE, deploy a new version of 7-zip to all those outdated endpoints. But you can also run PowerShell script deployments as well. So you can actually run PowerShell in the deployment and get that to run on there as well. One of the things we talk about is multi-step deployment. So it's not just a deployment that's finished. For example, maybe you want to update a web server. So you would maybe stop the service, reboot the server, upgrade the package, reboot the server again, then start that service again. You can do that with multi-step deployments. And Chocolatey Community Repository, while not one of the products we talked about, in those 6 at the beginning, it's an incredibly valuable resource with almost 10,000 unique packages on there and 180,000 versions of those packages. It's got to be trusted by a lot of people in order for us to reach 2.2 billion downloads as of yesterday. So that's a huge number of downloads, a huge number of packages, a huge resource for any organization that wants to use that. And as I mentioned, as an organization, you can, we don't recommend you use it directly, but something like Package Internalizer, where you're internalizing those packages, bring them down into your organization, checking the code, make sure you're happy with it. So something like that is ideal. Saves your teams, saves your sysadmins, or whoever it is that's doing it, time, not recreating those packages from scratch. So the organizational architecture there, that's what we kind of recommend organizations deploy. And we've got our admin workstations, we've got our automation there, we've got Jenkins in the bottom right-hand corner, left-hand corner, sorry. That could be anything. We just put Jenkins in there, that's one of the popular ones we use. But it's also that red box there is part of our Chocolatey for Business Azure environment that we've created. So that's our Azure Marketplace offering, where we put that all in one box and put it on one server for you to use. So Chocolatey for Business Azure environment is effectively Chocolatey for Business in a box. It puts that Chocolatey Central Management, so that's got that reporting and the deployments on there. It's got automation with Jenkins in there, so that automatic internalization of packages, for example. As I said, you can use what you want, but we've put Jenkins in there, so it kind of gets you started. And the package repository management with Sonatype Nexus as well. All of that is in that one Azure Marketplace offering. It's really useful for organizations who are taking a trial of Chocolatey. So when we're taking people through it, if they've got an Azure subscription, then one of the things we recommend is they deploy Chocolatey for Business Azure environment, gets them up and running so much more quickly. They can then get up and start trialing out Chocolatey for Business and seeing if it meets their organizational needs. So I've done lots of talking. I'm actually on time as well, so that's quite incredible. And I'm going to turn over to James now. And let him take you through a demo. James?
I didn't pick the image, but I probably should have. If you actually reach under your chair, you'll find some marshmallows. So if this goes really badly, then I haven't sacrificed enough marshmallows to the demo gods.
That was actually, we sacrificed the computer to the demo gods there, just to
Fair
get
enough. Well, that's not this one. But yeah, so we're going to just quickly run through some of what we were just talking about. So When we were talking about demos that we might do, we thought that spinning up a bunch of stuff would be easy enough, but spinning up the Chocolatey for Business Azure environment would be quicker, would allow us to just quickly show you that we've got CCM in dark mode, which I can switch. Maybe. OK, so there we go. Hopefully that's a little more visible. Sorry about that. We've got Nexus repository, as mentioned, for storing the packages internally. And we've got Jenkins. And of course, you can use any script runner to do the stuff that we're going to use Jenkins for here. We've just got some very simple jobs to keep packages updated from CCR in this case, sorry, the Chocolatey Community Repository. But of course, you can write this any way you want. You can have this running in PowerShell Universal, Script Runner, any of the multitude of ways you can run PowerShell scripts or anything that will allow you to run Chocolatey. So, yeah. And in this case, we're going to talk about the fun challenges of trying to keep a user allowed to install their own stuff up to date, and also but with the deployments that we have not being available for change. So we can see here we've got a selection of computers signed in, not too many, but it was a quick environment. And in this case, we have the option to deploy software from our Nexus repository to any of these computers. So we've got an example here where we've deployed some basic apps. You can imagine that this could be transformed into whatever you'd like. If you'd like to manage deployments of your software onto a server or series of servers, then that's easy enough to do. But as in this case, we're just going to say that we're managing user software. So we've deployed Firefox and Notepad++, classic user apps. And we can see that we have already got one outdated package, which is always a plus for the demonstration. This environment was stood up yesterday, and it looked nice then. But we're actually going to try and go and find something and patch it in a second. So as you can imagine, for any of these, we've got an example machine. And we should be able to see on here that we've got...
It's always a panic when you're doing this, and things take a little longer than it should do. But it worked perfectly earlier. Of course.
Let's go for a full. Is that vaguely visible to people at home, where we said we were going to avoid dark mode? But and we can see that we've got our theoretical workstation here, where we can spin up PowerShell. We can use Chocolatey to show that we have our internal sources, and that we've got a selection of applications installed locally. And then we can see that same thing again in Chocolatey GUI. And obviously, for an admin user, this is perfectly responsive. You can go in, you can manage all these applications, install things if you want, and it'll work nicely. You can uninstall things. But as a user, or as an admin managing a user, you maybe don't want the user to be able to tamper with these applications. You don't want them to be able to install everything. In those cases, you can ensure that you've got bits of software available that are on an internal source that your user has access to, but won't allow for pieces of software to be injected without your permission. So for example, we have here 7-zip. If you wanted to have that available to people without them having to go off and find 7-zip on a random website, as Paul mentioned earlier, then you can have that safely available here. So we can just install that. And it should all work.
One of the use cases that we kind of talked about before this, I was going to talk about it later, is that I mentioned Bob and Fiona Bob in accounting, Fiona in finance. They can have different software available to them. So you could have an accountant feed that only has accounting software in there. You could have a finance feed that is finance software in there, and you could have a common feed that they can take from. So maybe your browser's in a common feed, but some sort of spreadsheet or line of business applications only available from accounting, and not available to finance, and vice versa. So you can manage your permissions, quote unquote, in that way.
Yeah. And you can either do that with separate repositories, or you can use something like Cloudsmith, which has the ability to lock down applications based on which user you have there. Yeah, we've shown that we've got our software here. We can install it and uninstall it as we choose as admins. If we log into our theoretical Bob user, which I can't remember what I called it, but
it wasn't Bob. That's all I remember.
may have renamed it to Bob eventually. Probably not Bob.
It's always Bob, James.
I don't know, I feel like it should be Andy in accounting. I don't know why.
That's probably a better name, actually. Bob and Billing.
You went with Fiona in finance.
There we
and
go.
yeah.
I did.
So, sorry.
Bob and Billing is what I meant.
Bob and Billing, there we go. So we can log in here with our theoretical lower permissioned user. And we should be able to see that, though similar, you will be able to see if it wants. Okay. So in this case, we're using Chocolatey Agent, we're using Chocolatey GUI, and we're using Chocolatey, of course, along with the various licensed extensions, in order to have this locked down. So there are various settings that we can show. I should have shown on the other account. That allow the user to use Chocolatey Agent even if they haven't got the ability to elevate themselves. They'll be able to run Chocolatey commands which will communicate with the Chocolatey Agent, and then that will allow you to install applications appropriately. So they can not only do this by deploying out, so you can be running essentially as any old user and go from there, but you can actually allow for self-service. So you can have a user come to Chocolatey GUI, and if, say, you didn't want to, I don't want to say waste the time of your IT professionals, a user could come in and say, well, hey, okay, we've got this approved software. I actually prefer Chrome to Firefox, so I'm going to go with that. And the user will be able to install this. And you're able to, at the same time, lock out the ability to remove the software that you've provided them. So even though they don't want Firefox, they're not able to remove that from their machine.
You can also stop them in uninstalling the software that they've already installed. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but you can do it. You can turn the uninstall command off entirely, and upgrade and install as well. That's flexible.
Yeah. No, it is very configurable. Sorry.
It always takes longer than it should when you're waiting for it to do stuff. Exactly.
So I think the first demo I ever did of Chocolatey was the entire sysinternals package. I don't know if you guys have installed that, but it's a lot of small exes. They all get dropped in the bin folder. They all get dropped, and then they all create a shim for each and every one of them. And it takes a couple of seconds per exe. It's a very painful demo to be waiting for. But yeah, so as I was saying, we're now able to, though we're actually not grayed out here, we can try and uninstall a piece of software that we haven't installed as the user, but it'll fail with a useful error message, assuming folk want to read that. So we can see that Choco user is not allowed to uninstall Firefox as they didn't install it in the first place, whereas we would be able to uninstall Chrome. So.
And we also get the same thing from the command line. So we're demonstrating it in Chocolatey GUI here because we're talking about non-admin users. But it has exactly the same effect with Chocolatey CLI being run by non-admin users. So you can do both. This is just more visual and obviously better to demonstrate.
Presumably you've got centralized auditing so you can see who did what and when.
You've got package audit as well, yeah, where it tells you who installed or uninstalled or whatever and when.
Yeah. And so, of course, we should be able to now see, hopefully, although I should have bumped the check-in time a little, we should be able to see that we have now got Chrome installed, and it should be in date according to this. One of the useful things that we can actually show is, as we have now installed 7-zip on here, we should be able to use one of our jobs quickly. So these jobs are nothing, I hate to describe things as not particularly special, but they're just simple scripts that will go in and take parameters, and then you can run them to do stuff like internalize packages from the community repository that you have approved or just want to get internalized quickly. This is kind of the C for BAE environment is basically an excellent kind of proof of concept / demo environment. So we've given some jobs to get up quickly and running. So that people
You could take those PowerShell scripts away from that as well and use them in your own environment. They're not anything special.
Yeah.
And if you run them on a cadence as well, it will. We mentioned 7-zip, for example. It had a CVE, for example. It's an old version. If you had this, let's say, running every day, probably wouldn't be a big problem for you because it would update your internal repository, which is then deployed to your endpoints, and it's all updated without you doing anything.
Yeah. So we should be able to see that we had.
So this is the repository of packages that we're seeing here.
So we installed 22.0, and our theoretical CV patch release, 22.1, has now been internalized and pushed there. So what we can do, if we wanted to, would be either have a specific, a non-specific deployment job that would go in and update any number of packages that you could specify, or even just upgrade all. Or we can specifically go in, create a deployment that has steps, e.g. upgrade 7-zip, and we're just going to run an upgrade for 7-zip. Not being any more specific than that. So we've got our basic deployment. We can see if this is checked in time to show that it's outdated. No dice there, okay. But we can then go and run this deployment and show that it updates on the other side.
So that was a simple deployment you'd created there.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have simple deployments, you could have advanced deployments where you can have a more configurable Chocolatey command line. Simple ones are, I just want to do an upgrade and here's package name. But as we also talked about in the slides, you can run PowerShell. You can run PowerShell scripts, just one line of code, and deploy that to the end machines as well, endpoints. And then you have to sit and wait on it.
Yeah, I mean, the downside to any deployment is waiting for things to check in.
But one of the scripts we talked about, in Jenkins that James had updated 7-zip, got that new version down. But there is a script in there that will actually look at what's in your repository, look at what's available in the Chocolatey community repository, see what's updated, and bring them all down, internalize them, and put them back into your repository. Again, if you ran that on a nightly basis, all your packages that you've got in there are all updated. And then if you had that deployment running as well, scheduled deployment, you'd be able to go in there and just update all your endpoints as well. Very little for you to do. But also, again, as James said, we've got that in Jenkins, Chocolatey for Business Azure environment, but you could use, PowerShell Universal. So what did he say? You could have scheduled tasks, script runner, basically anything. It is just effectively PowerShell scripts that we're using under the hood. And we're using Jenkins really as a sort of automation engine or a scheduled task engine that just runs those scripts in a scheduled cadence.
Yeah, to push 7-zip up earlier, I did it here on this machine.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's...
So has that been deployed Azure yet?
Yeah, that should have been.
Do you have an FCCM mode where it randomly takes up to 2 days to push a package out?
No, we removed that. Removed that option.
So this, I really should have thought, the one thing I didn't write down is to bump the check-in time
Okay.
all the way down. Yeah.
What's the default check-in time?
5 minutes?
5 minutes. Okay. So the machines would check into CCM every 5 minutes. Generally, when we do a demo, we bump it right down to, I think, is it a minute?
Yeah.
Because I think that's the minimum you can have. Obviously, we've got to do that. But what that'll do when it checks in, it'll have upgraded 7-zip. It'll then report back to say, I've completed this step, and if it was a multi-step deployment, it would then say, have you got any more steps for me to do? In this case, it's just one step, so it wouldn't need anything else. It's completed that deployment will update to say it's been successful, and then that's it complete. So if you've got 100 computers in there, it'll wait till they're all completed, they're all successful before it marks that as successful. So there we go, it's marked as successful now.
Oh, sorry, this was an example of it.
Oh, it's an example, okay, sorry.
My fault.
So, but
But
that
yes,
gives you an
two successful
example of
so
what
far.
it is.
So,
You
yeah.
also set alerts for saying, you know, if they're not all deployed, after 1 week, tell me the machines, rather than you having to go and look to actually get an alert to say, oh, these 10 machines haven't had this update.
We are working on getting notifications for deployments, or proper notifications. When you log in, you would look at the deployment itself, and it's fairly clear that it's, in this case, you know, we've got the yellow, we've got the green, etc. So some of it's successful, some of it's not. But this is in a pre-version 1 state, so we're adding features. I think we're at 0.11.3, is it? Can't remember the version number, but we're at a pre-version 1. Once we have things like this, then we'll be launching the version 1, but notifications are coming.
Sysadmins want to sort of set and forget, let's just push it out.
Yeah.
I don't want to monitor it, but I want to know if there are problems.
There are email notifications for lots of things in CCM. So yeah, you would get the email notifications. What's going on?
So happily we can see there that 7-zip has been upgraded to 22.1.
So that was the deployment from CCM onto the machine that you can now see in Chocolatey GUI and see that being updated.
Yeah.
Is that your demo?
I think that's most of it, although I think,
Cool.
yeah,
All right.
all the fun bits.
Early. Wow. Okay. So we've just
What
got a
did I
couple of
miss?
more slides to actually go through, which I'm going to bring up. It's just really an overview of what we've talked about today, and not the we've not sacrificed any more computers, so we should be good to go now. I'll put that off. Okay. I can get rid of that. So, Chocolatey for Business versus open source. I should take that out as well. I can't say that either. So we've looked at, you know, the part of the product suite. We've looked at the free and open source versions. We've looked at the commercial versions, and we want to look at the differences. So the open source will deal with the left-hand side first. Chocolatey is a recognised package manager. We've been about for almost 12 years now. And as we looked at the stats for the Chocolatey community repository, 2.2 billion downloads, nearly 10,000 unique packages, and 180,000 versions of those packages. Proven approach for 12 years. We've built on top of that NuGet framework and come up with a universal packaging format that allows you to take all of those different installer types, zips, archives, XEs, MSIs, all that, and bring it into a Chocolatey package. But open source is DIY. You build your own features. We've talked about the PowerShell scripts that we've got as part of Chocolatey for Business Azure environment. Excuse me. But you know, as a free and open source user, you would be writing your own scripts. And that's just the way open source is for all. It's not just Chocolatey. It's no different in that respect. And if you're wanting support, there's community support there. We've got a Discord server. We've got GitHub. You know, all the usual things: discussions, Google groups, etc., etc. So that's your open source side of things, and that should probably be familiar to most people. There's nothing special there for Chocolatey. But the Chocolatey for Business really is aligned to the organizational use cases. We've looked at GUIs for package builder, there's package uploader as well, which allows you to create that package by just right-clicking on the exe or the MSI and you know, creating the metadata and the scripts from that. You've got package uploader, which we didn't look at, but it's the GUI to upload the packages up into your repository. So it gives you those kind of, hold your hand a little bit more. Organizational use cases, lets your guys, you know, your team get on with doing what they want to do, which isn't packaging it all day and deploying things all day. It's got that quality of life tooling and advanced functionality. We've talked about package audit, package throttle, and all. You know, there's lots more beyond that. We just highlighted those ones, and we've got Chocolatey Central Management as well. There's also the easier path to migrate for open source, which is, you know, fine. You don't have to start again. Easy path to move. And finally, as opposed to the community support, we've got a support team behind Chocolatey for Business. We've got SLAs, as you would probably expect. And you get access to professional services as well. That could be that, for example, you have a really, really difficult line of business application that you need to package. We can help with that. We've got customers where we help with that organizational architecture that we've talked about. We help them deploy that, build that, make sure it works with their workflow as well, and kind of build Chocolatey into that, so we can help with all of that. And we're looking at the three, we tried to break it down into sort of three areas, which is baseline and consistency and then tracking. And we're looking at the parts of the Chocolatey for Business products that can help with that. So your baseline is really about getting those packages there, getting those packages available for your endpoints. And you can use Package Builder and Package Uploader, as I mentioned, for that, or Package Internalizer to take those packages down from the Chocolatey community repository. And then keep that consistency there and allowing you to have that inventory of software, known software. You can use Package Synchronizer, which will look at software that's already installed on your machine. Say, for example, you've got all your nodes, they've been running for a long time, and then you want to deploy Chocolatey on it. What about the stuff that's already on there? What about all that software, those zips, those archives, etc.? Well, you can use Package Synchronizer, where you can tell it that you've got Google Chrome there that actually matches the Google Chrome package. You've got this line of business application there that actually matches that line of business application there, and Chocolatey will then pick up and be able to manage those as well. And then finally, you've got tracking and managing all with central management and deployments. We've seen that, James has given us a demo of that, and the self-service GUI as well that we'd seen earlier on. So the final bit is, okay, Chocolatey's awesome. What do I need to use it? We can use Chocolatey, both client and server operating systems. Okay, we support Windows 8.1. That'll probably be changing to Windows 10 very shortly because Windows 8.1 is now end of life. But we tend to support what Microsoft support, and we tend to let people who are using Chocolatey kind of have a bit more of a run up. There are still some people using Chocolatey on Windows 7. We do know that. There are hoops to jump through, but if you've got it internal in your organization, those hoops would be less. But it's possible to do it. We also support Windows Server 2008 R2 in Azure. The support for that ends in January next year. Okay, so that's why we support that. It's important to say in Azure, not on-prem. .NET 4 is required for pre-version 2, which is what we've got just now. We're at version 1.3.0. So if you want to use TLS 1.2, which you need to connect to the Chocolatey community repository, you need .NET 4.5. But that's the requirements for that. When we hit version 2, which will be coming out very shortly, you'll need .NET 4.8. That's what we're moving to. And one of the things that a lot of people ask is, okay, you talked about repository managers. What is it that I need? And NuGet v2 at the moment, and or v3 when version 2 comes out, because version 2 supports v3, but a NuGet feed is what we support. Now, that's not a proprietary format. That's not a format that only Chocolatey has and that you have to buy a Chocolatey product for. Sonatype Nexus, as we had in the Chocolatey for Business Azure environment, it's a separate product. There's Artifactory as well. A lot of organizations have one or both of those in there. There's ProGet. There's a whole host of server repository managers that support NuGet version 2 repositories. So we don't tie you to any particular product, and we're not selling you one of those products. We did have something called Chocolatey Server, but we no longer support that because there's other products that do it better.
It's possibly worth mentioning that even beyond or below that, you can get away with using something as simple as a literal file share folder.
Yeah.
So
might not be great for scaling for a large organization, but maybe for a small business, you could get away with doing that. When I'm spinning up demos on my machine, all of the packages live in a folder, and that's a Chocolatey source that will be able to pull packages from. So we're all done. We think Chocolatey is magic. If you've ever seen any Chocolatey demonstrations, you'll have seen this meme. We continue to use it. I think it's mandatory. But thank you very much for your time. If you've got any questions, I think we have, actually we're just dead at time. If you've got any questions about what you've seen today, come and see us at the booth. If you've got any questions about Chocolatey in general, come and see us at the booth, grab a t-shirt, grab some stickers, and thank you for your time.